So we start out this crap fest with some opening narration.
There has been a war between orcs and humans for as long as can be remembered.
It was 20 or 30 years, not that long ago.
But there was once a time when we did not even know who our enemy was.
Well, yeah, that's kind of par for the course. Japan could have said the same thing about the US. Look, I get the point of this. It's trying to look back nostalgically on better days before all that the orcs knew was war. But I'm kind of distracted by the no-duh of this monologue. But this does lead into the first and only scene where we get any sort of characterization. Durotan the orc is talking to his wife Draka. Draka is pregnant, you see, and they're just having the typical couple banter about naming their child.
Can you hide your fat belly?
Better than you can hide your fat head.
This has an obvious subtext of legacy to it. You can see Durotan is concerned for the world he's leaving for his child, and this scene does a good job of establishing that. Well, next day our hero meets up with the rest of the orc clans to see why they've all been summoned.
What did she say?
She begs for you to free her child.
But I need him. I need all of them.
It should probably be unsurprising to learn that the guy using the souls of children to power his magic is the bad guy.
It's powered by a forsaken child?
Might be, kind of. I mean, I didn't use the whole thing.
This doesn't come up in the movie, but the blue mooks they're killing are called Draenei. It should be unsurprising to learn in later installments of the game, they make an alliance with the humans. The common denominator of the alliance seems to be, so when were the orcs forced to attempt genocide on you? Well, this leads to Gul'dan, the baby killer guy, making a portal to Azeroth. This universe's attempt to hold off Tolkien's lawyers. And now is as good a time as any to say the effects in this movie are actually really good. The orcs look about as real as you could expect from the CGI creation. There's some people not flinching when they probably should, and a little bit where you can see the humans are clearly acting against a green screen. But they do look really good for a CGI creation. I'm more of a fan of the makeup stuff they use in Lord of the Rings. It'll always seem more real, although it can falter somewhat when orcs and humans share the screen, though it's still better than some movies I've seen. Well, the portal makes Draka go into labor, because of course it does. Don't you know anything about magic? But because the portal runs on, the souls of children, there are complications. So Gul'dan uses the soul of a nearby deer to save the child. And I gotta say, that deer has some brass balls. A portal opens up in the ground, and hulking monsters come up out of it, and it just stands there. When I go hunting, a loose twig will make them run. Well, anyway, this is when the movie actually starts. We open on Ironforge. See, it says so right there. Where the king of the dwarves is showing off his pistol to his human companion, Lothar. That's not a euphemism or anything, it's an actual gun. Careful it doesn't get excited and go off in your face there, man. They get interrupted when a message arrives. Then, we get a line that gives me flashbacks.
You might want to head home, big man. Someone's attacked one of your garrisons. Seems your king needs you, Commander.
Please no. Not another garrison! Which brings us to Stormwind. Color-coded for convenience. It's here we meet the human mage Khadgar.
Wow, Khadgar, you're a pretty shit wizard.
So that's how silence works. Well, anyway, he wants to examine a dead body from the aforementioned garrison.
Let me complete my examination of the body across the hall.
Only to tell us we have to go to a different place to learn the exposition.
You must summon the Guardian. It should be he who explains it.
So, off to Goldshire. Thankfully, we're not on Moonguard. This basically exists to set up Lothar's son, the king, the queen. Go see Medivh. That's it. Oh, and they're related. At this point, we jump back to see what the orcs are up to, and they're orcs. What do you think they're up to? Except for our boys, the Frostwolves, who don't feel like participating in raiding peasants. This is the moral high ground, people. That intermission over, Lothar and Khadgar arrive in Karazhan.
I didn't know so many books even existed.
Nerds, right? A seasoned soldier apparently has problems with stairs. I don't blame him. Stairs are always up to something. Listen, if Khadgar isn't going to be himself, the dad jokes fall to me. Which brings me to a biggest issue with this movie. There's very little character. All the dialogue in this movie is about moving the plot forward. Good dialogue tends to serve a double purpose. Sometimes triple. It's why people who complain about this moment in The Last Jedi are so wrong. Yeah, it was an attempt at humor, but it was also about showing you that Luke has kind of become bitter and disillusioned with the Jedi. It's about more than what is said. Dialogue in this movie is all about moving the plot forward. There's nothing that gives us insight to the character's emotion. The only glimpses of personality were from Drakar and Duratan at the beginning here. Moving on.
Nice segue!
Foreshadowing. Get it because it's a shadow? Whatever. Here we get an explanation that the baby murdering magic is bad.
Magic, unlike any other, it feeds on life itself. It pollutes the user, twisting everything it touches. It promises great power, but it exacts a terrible price.
I feel like I'm kind of belaboring that issue, but I have a point. This is very much a movie that exists for the sake of the lore, rather than the lore being made for the sake of the story. And this insistence on explaining things we can plainly see is a result of that. Yeah, the power used to kill children is bad, we get it. You really didn't need to explain that. You could have just cut to them discussing what to do about it. Well, from there the king orders an expedition to capture an orc, dead or alive. Fighting ensues.
Don't try and take him on with brute force. They're stronger. Be smarter.
You'll see why that's an ironic statement later. Wish I had that spell in game. From there, a single orc is captured, as well as Paula Patton as this Star Trek reject. He doesn't last long. Again, exposition that we already saw.
This is not Orc World. Orc World is dead. Orcs take this world now.
This is a movie, not a nuclear reactor. We don't need this much redundancy. Gul'dan twirls as much sash, and Duratan has second thoughts. So, with this scene, I gotta ask, was Garona supposed to be the protagonist? Because the movie lacks a clear protagonist, and she feels like she should be, but then she kind of isn't? This would be helpful as an audience POV, and help give the movie a sense of forward momentum. One of the problems I'm having with this review is, well, you just saw it. All the dialogue exists to move the plot forward, so I can only say so much about each scene. Having a defined protagonist in a slightly smaller scale might help keep up the momentum and stop these lulls in the action. How come a movie called Warcraft has very little war? Well, anyway, Lothar pulls a Commander Shepard and Khadgar does nerd stuff. So the humans go back with Garona to find the dark portal. There's some attempts at characterization here.
He wishes to lie with me.
It doesn't really hit. Khadgar and Garona just sort of give generic sad backstories, that kind of thing.
My parents gave me to the Kirin Tor when I was 6 years old.
From here we learn that Duratan wants to meet with the king. I'm sure this will go well. But before that, a meeting of the heads of state. Jesus fucking Christ, what the hell is wrong with those elves? I can tell you where the budget to this movie didn't go.
In this soulless pit of atrocities we call life, to each of us must come agonizing torments.
Now I get why the Windrunner sisters all fell for humans. I'm an ugly motherfucker and I'm better looking than those guys. Here's a reminder that Lothar doesn't want anything bad to happen to his son. I'm sure that's going to go well. While that's happening, Medivh tells Khadgar to leave him alone. Hey man, I've been there. From here, Khadgar does the fantasy equivalent of telling us the call is coming from inside the house.
What do you think the image means? The orcs were summoned. From this side of the gate, they were invited in.
Who could have done it except for the obvious person? Spoiler, it doesn't go well. The Green Orcs ambush the Frost Wolves due to the defection of Duratan's second. And the humans get caught up in that too. So they fight, then they fight, then they fight some more. And that doesn't go well either. The magic apparently taxed Medivh, so he has to go back to Karazhan. It's there that Khadgar notices the guy giving off villainous energy is apparently corrupted by the Fel. This sparks Khadgar to need to go to Dalaran.
I have to go. We need the help of the Kirin Tor.
Look, if it's coming across like I'm just telling you what's happening in the movie, trust me, it's not as bad as watching the movie where they do the same thing but over the span of a few minutes. A lot of this stuff doesn't need explanation, but the movie feels like it needs to give it anyway. We all understand that Azeroth is Middle-earth, but you don't need to stop every once in a while and explain your exact variation of this particular fantasy concept. This ends up harming the characterization because the time we could have spent giving these people their personality was wasted explaining a concept that doesn't really matter. We all have some familiarity with fantasy universes. Quit explaining everything.
And now, this. If love is what you need, you must be willing to travel to the ends of the world to find it.
Wait, this is a love story?
Wait a minute, when the fuck did that happen?
Whatever, the orcs in this universe look better than the elves, so fair enough, dude. Also, is he implying that he's her dad? I think that's what's going on here, but this is one of the few times where the movie doesn't explain itself. I'm pretty sure in the game she's actually half Draenei, the blue people we saw at the beginning. More mustache twirling, the guy that uses the souls of children is still the bad guy. Surprise, surprise. Again, this shit came out of nowhere. Maybe if you didn't feel the need to explain every little detail of the world, you would have had time to establish a romantic subplot. I'm not a fan of romance in general, but I can't even be mad at this. It came out of nowhere.
My entire life, I've never felt as much pain as I do now.
Imagine how you would feel if you had a personality. While this is going on, the rest of the Horde is enacting genocide on the Frost Wolves. You know, the people against baby murder. Darkar escapes, leading to the origin story of Superman, Moses, and our boy Thrall here. Guys, the prologue of Warcraft 3 is called Exodus of the Horde. Like the Book of Exodus, let my people go. It's weird how often I see this character compared to a Jesus-like character. He's not. Wrong biblical character. I just realized this has some unfortunate implications now that goblins are full-time members of the Horde. Well, I guess I should go back to talking about the movie I'm actually reviewing. Khadgar arrives in Dalaran to speak to a leader of the organization called the Kirin Tor. I have to say, this is something refreshing about the Warcraft universe. The humans seem to be better mages than the elves. In many settings, it seems to be the exact opposite. It's never really explained why, but if I could hazard a guess, I would imagine that humans just tend to have a little bit better control. Most of the elven mages we see are fire mages of some description, which has a connotation of being wild and unpredictable, whereas most of the human mages we see are frost mages, which has a connotation of being cool, level-headed, under control, chill. You know, that kind of thing. It's somebody who doesn't let their emotions rule them, and so they're the ones that create the flying city. See, I'm not being all negative. Well, anyway, Khadgar talks to the leaders, then gets led inside this weird magical box. Apparently the Kirin Tor are Time Lords.
And one day, your life may depend on it. I am definitely a madman with a box.
Told you, foreshadowing. Well, this lady hands out some nonsense advice.
Always remember. From light comes darkness, and from darkness...
Darkness is merely the relative absence of light. So, no, darkness doesn't come from light. I get what you're trying to say here. The powers we see as opposites are actually one and the same, and the fact that there's evil in this world is counterbalanced by the good in this world. It's just it's said in a way that's really, well, stupid? Well, whatever. Now we get to see Medivh killing his oldest and closest friend, and Stormwind preparing for the March on the Dark Portal. In this meeting, Medivh truly earns the title of Warlock. The word Warlock coming from the Old English word Warlong? Whatever this, meaning deceiver or oathbreaker. That's what he does here. He deceives the king into thinking the Frostwolf Rebellion is still on, and he breaks his oath as a guardian. Again, not all bad.
And you let him play soldier anyway.
Stop! You killed him!
Varys, take him to a cell to calm down.
A cell seems a bit harsh. That was a minor tiff, if anything. His quarters, maybe. Well, this is mostly just an excuse to allow Garona and Lothar to have a heart-to-heart, leading Stormwind to go on the march. It appears there's something in the air because Durotan reconciles with his number 2, the guy that betrayed him. They go off to try and kill Gul'dan, and so they fight. Durotan loses, but only because Gul'dan cheats. So this was kind of a Xanathos scheme. I know I'll lose, but I'll reveal this guy for the monster he truly is. Wow, I just got what they were trying to imply here. At the same time, we get to see Khadgar freeing Lothar from prison using fan service. and they go off to battle Medivh, kind of a monsters on both sides kind of thing. Well, during that fight, they get attacked by more fan service, and can I just take this time to point out that while the sets all look very nice and everything, and they all keep with the aesthetic of the game, this world doesn't feel lived in. Everything is too shiny and new. This works for the game's more cartoony aesthetic, but with real people, it just feels too clean. This even comes across in the orc encampment. It might be shabby and run down, but it's weirdly sterile. I guess this kind of aesthetic can work with other movies, like that Speed Racer movie that came out a few years back. It's trying to go for more of an epic fantasy setting, and that doesn't really work with how flat everything feels. So they fight, and they fight, and they fight some more. And Lothar and Khadgar come up with a plan. I'm sure this will go well.
Distract him. Then what? Get Medivh in the font.
Well, the plan was to hit him with a rock.
It was a big rock.
Thankfully, Medivh isn't Batman, so that plan actually worked. While this is going on, the forces of Stormwind are engaging the Horde forces. Not exactly the charge of the Rohirrim. Now, see, this is what I meant when I said this line.
They're stronger. Be smarter.
Is a little ironic. The human forces here just sort of charge the orcs and then engage in single combat. This could have been a great opportunity to show the human ability to work together and not go off chasing their own personal honor as a strength. You know, it's not about who can get the most kills, it's about protecting your buddy and making sure the unit works better as a whole. But instead, it's just a melee. No wonder you lose. The most basic of strategy would have served you well here. Whatever, their main goal is to save the captives. At least that's a good strategy, depriving Gul'dan of his source of magic. Guess. Not that they have a lot of choice. From there, Khadgar does an exorcism on Medivh, reciting that dumb mantra from earlier.
From light comes darkness, and from darkness, light.
Whatever, it's what we got. And I gotta say, the magic in this movie is, well, weird. Most settings have either a soft magic system or a hard magic system. A soft magic system is more about the metaphor. It's about the emotions the characters go through. Frodo is forever scarred by the One Ring because Tolkien wanted to tell a story about how war scars people, and about how you can never really go back after it's over. The exact mechanics are inconsequential. A hard magic system is a little more like a science than anything else. It's about saying, these are the rules, now let's see what we can do within the confines of these rules. I think they're trying to go for more of a soft magic system here, but maybe this is similar to the fault of the flat characterization of this movie, but this doesn't really work as a metaphor for anything. So we hit this weird equilibrium where it's hard enough to be somewhat understood, but soft enough that it can do almost anything the plot needs it to. See, it's weird. The magic just seems to have the flaws of both systems, way too rigid for hard magic and lacking an explanation for soft magic, without the benefits of either one. Whatever. This leads to Deadwind Pass getting its name. Imagine if he had missed. Well, Medivh is going for the redemption equals death route, and opens a portal to Stormwind for the humans to escape through. And the king is stupidly noble here, so he doesn't retreat when he should.
We should leave! We save as many of our people as we can!
The people are gonna need a leader, dipshit. Do the selfish thing, which also happens to be the right thing. I could see this working if it was meant to be sort of a character flaw, but I don't see that. Well, anyway, Garona kills the king at his own command to bring her honor so she can stay with the Horde and make peace or something. What exactly the honor code is as ill-defined as the magic in the world. Maybe that's the point, though. This ending with Garona here really could have worked if she had been the actual protagonist of the film. This looks like the ending of a story about someone who got exactly what they wanted to their own horror. I mean, this is the face of somebody who got what they wanted. If she had started off the film wanting deeply to be part of the orc culture, only to realize at the end how toxic it all was, that could have worked. This is probably the first indication I'm getting of those feelings, though, because the rest of the movie, she's just spouting exposition. This movie really should have been narrower in scope. Have Khadgar or Garona be the protagonists, who, while one gets what they want, the other gets what they need. Instead, I'm left to invent better stories of what we've got. Oh well, I suppose I should finish this. Man, Griffins kick ass! Well, now it's time to... Well, with Lothar and the main orc dude. He's called Blackhand. It doesn't really matter. From there, Lothar picks up the king's body and makes his way to Stormwind.
Garona's dagger.
I pulled that from Lane's neck.
Well, there has to be an explanation.
She made a choice.
I don't believe that.
Maybe you and I didn't know her as well as we thought we did.
Well, I certainly didn't. That's my main complaint.
Out of the box, Ghost! Who are you? Well, seriously, who is she?
Well, anyway, they have a funeral for the king. Jesus, the elves are ugly. I'm sorry to keep bringing that up, but man. And we get our first For the Alliance of the movie. And there it is, Warcraft. Was it any good? God, no. There was a severe lack of focus, the characters were weak, and the pacing was rushed. This all felt like it happened over a day or two, but the travel time alone would make that impossible. Not to mention this has a severe sense of feeling like it's just a backstory. You could have skipped this whole movie with an opening monologue, and then started the series with a Horde Alliance war. Or skipped it and adapt Warcraft 3. You know, the one people actually like for its story. It's not unsalvageably bad. If they made a sequel, I could see this actually being good. Someone just needs to tell the writer that not everyone cares about the extensive lore in this movie. I could see how some fans might enjoy this movie. It's nice to see a video game movie that fails due to too much passion rather than too little. But it falls squarely in the purview of this channel. It could be better. It could be worse. You know, I would make a crack about the writing being on the level of fan fiction, but I've read enough Warcraft fan fiction to know the interracial couple would probably involve a troll if it was actual fan fiction. And if you're ever feeling bad about your life, just realize I uttered the sentence, I've read enough Warcraft fan fiction.